if you wanted to kick off.
Okay, welcome everyone to our first of 3 Microsoft webinars around the inclusive classroom. I'm Deb Kroger from the CEO, and we've also got Frankie Roberts on here from the CEO as well. And we're delighted to introduce Troy Waller from Microsoft, who is a real champion about using this technology with students and making learning accessible for all students. So we hope you find today really useful and valuable. Troy's a wealth of knowledge and you're in really good hands today. So over to you, Troy.
Thanks very much, Deb. I appreciate all the really nice things that you said then. That was very kind of you. All right, guys. Well, hello. And by the way, I have to be careful. I use guys in a gender inclusive way, just like the lady at Target. Whenever she calls our family down, she says, "Come on, guys." I'm really pleased to be here. I'm really pleased that you guys have decided to invite me along and be a part of this workshop today. I'm going to take us on a bit of a journey. Let me start by telling you who I am. So my name is Troy. I'm the accessibility lead for Microsoft Australia Education. I am a teacher. I'm not a techie, and neither am I, in sales and marketing or anything like that. I am 100% from an education background. This is my, 23rd year in education, 22nd, 23rd year in education, and 16 years of that was in schools. And most of that was actually in lower years. I did some time working in an EAL capacity at a high school level and also at a university level, but most of my time has been spent in education, has been working with children and in a primary context. So I say that to let you know that I'm definitely not coming at this from a techie perspective. It's all about what this looks like in the classroom. Just down here on the bottom of the slide, today's slides and resources are here via this link, which is aka.ms/today's stuff. Please notice there's 2 S's in there. And you just need to type that into your browser. So if someone wants to pop that in the chat, that would be really helpful. But it's aka.ms/today's stuff, and then you will get these slides. And the reason why that matters is because the slides have got links. And I'm going to be referring to things, and it's just nice to be able to have those slides to come back to later, and a lot of resources that we're not going to be able to make the time to go through, but you can later on click on those links and explore those as well. I'm just going to make sure that I keep an eye on time. I'm just letting you know that this is work from home, and my children are going to come walking in the door at any moment. I've told them to come in quietly, but who knows, and let's see what exactly happens there. Let's get started, shall we? So if I was to ask you, what is the average shoe size for men in the world? What is the average shoe size for men in the world? Have a think about that. You can pop it in the chat if you want, but just have a think. What do you think is the average shoe size? And we're talking the entire world. So I'll just give you a moment to have a think and maybe pop it in the chat. That's fine. It doesn't matter if you don't, because I'm going to tell you that most people like me start to say something around an 8 or a 9, but it's actually a US 10.5, which surprised me because I actually think that's quite big. But yes, it's a US 10.5. Now, what would happen if we started making size 10.5 shoes, men's 10.5 shoes for everyone, right? If we said, oh, okay, that's the average. So most people are wearing a 10.5 shoe. So let's throw that out there. Well, of course, we would actually miss what most people need. Most people don't wear a 10.5 shoe size, even though this is the average, right? Very few people are, in fact, the average of anything. And in fact, this is what we call the myth of the average. And, I had this explained to me that the average is conceptual. It doesn't actually exist in the real world. It's a mathematical or statistical concept. And yeah, it's not something that exists in the real world. And yet we often talk about the average, what does the average Aussie think? Or what does the average person think? Or what does this, average this, average that? So what we actually need, though, when it comes to shoes is we need various sizes. And let's face it, we want various styles as well. And because we all have different needs, we all have different wants. So you may have heard this term thrown around as an educator, which is differentiation. So in education, this was a term that was thrown around a lot, probably about 20 years ago to 10 years ago. You may even still hear it thrown around in your school. And as a teacher, it used to really annoy me, this term. It actually used to upset me because it meant that I, as a teacher, was responsible for making sure that all my lessons met all my kids' needs. And I was responsible for making resources. I was responsible for making sure that that there was auditory this and visual that and kinesthetic this and it was a real stress for me. And to be honest, this is exactly how I felt. Who has time to do all that as a teacher? It may on paper, just like the myth of the average, it may be something that is wonderful in concept. I joke with people and say it's like communism, great on paper, didn't work in the real life. Because I barely had time to do the basics of my job as an early youth primary teacher, let alone create special resources for every one of my kids who needed them. And if they are diagnosed and funded, then maybe there's an aid that we could call on, but that aid is, oftentimes stretched across multiple classes, etc. So differentiation is a myth, like the myth of the average. So now I want to talk to you about something that's a little bit more palatable for us as teachers, and that is this term here, personalization. So while seemingly the same as differentiation, it is somewhat different because personalization doesn't put the onus on the teacher, but on the learner, right? And personalization obviously isn't just in education. I'm sure that you personalize your phones, you personalize your devices. I've got my Apple Watch on here, and because my eyesight's going, the text is really big and bright colors. But we hear a lot of talk about personalization and personalized learning, and that is where the student personalizes their own learning. Now, we're not going to get into an in-depth, discussion on personalization and personalized learning, but I do want to bring that back in terms of what we can do with technology, right? And personalizing technology. So when we think about personalization in this space, the onus is no longer on the teacher to differentiate, but the onus is on the learner to personalize, right? And to personalize their engagement. Yes, the teacher must facilitate an environment where personalization is possible, but ultimately they don't decide what this looks like for each individual student. Instead, the onus there is on the student. Now, before we jump into Immersive Reader, which is all about personalization, and you're going to see that, I just want to stop and take you into what's called the Ease of Access Center in your Windows 10 device. Now, the reason we're doing this is because this is often overlooked, and this is the perfect place to start when we talk about personalizing our devices. So Mac users, Chromebook users, please just, I don't know, chat amongst yourselves for a minute. We won't be very long on this. We will be 100% jumping back into things that are going to be relevant to you as well. But just for the moment, we're going to talk about ease of access. Now, I'm in the settings tab of my device. That is when I hit the Windows key, I see that little settings wheel pop up, and I can click on that. And then when I do, I come into my settings, which looks like this, and I'm looking for ease of access. All right. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to do exactly that. I'm going to open up my settings. And there it is open on the screen. So you can see this is now not just a slide, this is really my settings. Now, here's ease of access living over here. Now, why ease of access matters is because this is where we can, and don't be distracted by personalization there. This is where we can make our machines more accessible. Anything that we need to make our machines more accessible, to make our engagements more accessible as end users, lives here in this space. So once upon a time, if I wanted to change my mouse, I'd go over to the mouse settings. If I wanted to change my visual, I go to the visual settings. If I want to change sound, I go to sound settings. And everything was spread around through settings, right? And back in those days, I think it was control panel. But now what we've done is we put everything into the one spot, which is called ease of access. So I'm going to click on that. Now, we're not going to spend a lot of time on this because you've come along to see reading support, but I do want to just make sure that you understand how this works and why it's important. So we have three categories over here. We've got vision, all right? We've got all these things under vision. We've got hearing, everything here, and interaction. So anything that is going to improve the visual accessibility of your device for a student to personalize or for you to personalize is right here in this space here. Okay, anything that we're going to focus for changing the way that we interact auditorily, if that's a word, through our device is here, and anything that we need around interaction is here as well. All right, so this is more about seeing, this is more about hearing, this is more about touch. Now, when we click here on display, for example, which is where we are now, you can see that I've got the ability to make my text bigger. Now, no longer are we having to worry about font size and point this and 11 point, 12 point. There's just a nice little slider and we can see the sample text and we can go up and down and we can change our text there. And you notice it's really intuitive. It's not saying font size, it says make the text bigger. Or make everything bigger, right? We can actually change the screen resolution right there. We can make everything brighter and make everything darker in there as well. And then we can do things down here like showing the animations in Windows. And that can be a distraction for some of the students that we're working with. So being able to turn that on and off is really important. The transparency as well. Some of you and some of the students you work with have trouble differentiating with colors and contrast. So turning that off is really important. And also the scroll bars, which live over the side of the screen, being able to turn those on and off. And how long do we want our notifications to last for? If we're working with some students who may have a cognitive impairment or they may have low vision, they want those notifications to be longer or shorter, etc. So I'm not going to harp too long on this, but I just wanted to point out the display features are here, changing your mouse pointer. See, I've got a lovely big teal mouse for doing presentations, but for people, this is a really good way to have the mouse. I can change the size and the color of my text cursor so it's not too big. Magnifier, right? Being able to hover over parts of the screen and magnify. This one people love. All right, being able to turn on the color filters means that I can invert the colors. I can go into grayscale and also grayscale inverted. But what a lot of people don't realize is that we've got the color blindness filters as well. So if you've got red-green color blindness, there's two different kinds, or if you've got blue-yellow color blindness, you can turn that on. And what's going to happen is when images, graphics, even text come along, it will make sure that it doesn't show it in colors that you are unable to differentiate, right? So it's really, really cool. And, you know, we don't even know sometimes that the students are struggling with that. So being able to do that is really, really nice. High contrast is really important as well. You know, if you have trouble with color differentiation, being able to turn that on. The narrator is in there as well for screen reading, which is phenomenal now. You don't need to buy third-party narration software anymore. That's all in there. And hearing and interaction, all that kind of stuff is in there as well. All right. So I just wanted to draw your attention to that. Remember, we just click on our our Windows key on our keyboard, and then look for the little settings wheel, which brings us in here, and then we jump into ease of access. Okay. So thank you for letting me share that with you. Again, as I said, I think it's really important because sometimes we don't know it's there and it can make a massive difference to the kids that we work with. All right. So jumping into reading support and what we can do in the reading support space. So hopefully you have heard of Immersive Reader. If not, you're in for a real treat. We're going to dive in and talk about where Immersive Reader came from and what it looks like, and then I'm going to give you a bit of a demo. And you're going to be able to walk away from this session today knowing exactly where to find Immersive Reader, how to switch it on, and how to play around with it, because you're going to, if you haven't seen it before, it's going to excite you. And being able to have a play is part of discovery, right? So in 2015, a group of Microsoft staff participated in a hackathon at Microsoft in Seattle, and they decided they were going to tackle dyslexia. So what happened there is people got to walk away from their jobs for a couple of weeks, a week or two, and work on passion projects. And Microsoft, you know, sees that as a time to just let people ideate. And it doesn't have to have a business application. It doesn't even have to be something that's going to work for Microsoft. It can just be something really cool. Unfortunately, we don't do it in Australia. It's only in the US. Anyway, these people decided that they were going to work on dyslexia, and they built this thing called Learning Tools, and it won the 2015 hackathon, and it has grown so much over the last 6 or so years that it is now, we've rebranded it, we've called it Immersive Reader, and it is ubiquitous across many of our tools. So when I show you this today, I'm going to show it to you in things like OneNote or in Word, but you're going to find out that it's actually living in a lot of our tools, and it makes life really much better for some students. Okay, so what I'm going to do first is I'm going to show you this video. Now, this video is a little bit old, so it talks about learning tools and a little bit about Immersive Reader, but same thing, okay? And it's showing it to us in OneNote, but it is much broader now in OneNote. And it's also an older version, but I want you to see the response of this teacher, and also I want you to see how she, some of the stats that she saw from this earlier version of this tool, because it's really quite cool. So I'm going to play that, and if someone can let me know if there's no sound, that would be helpful, but I think there should be.
What did we start talking about yesterday, guys? St. Patrick's Day!
I am a resource special education teacher. I target groups of students who need intervention for either reading, language arts, or math. These are kids that struggle every day. And to watch them grow and learn and have those aha moments,
Oh, now I get it.
Is so rewarding to me, and it just makes my heart soar. We have ADHD, dyslexia, dysgraphia. I have a student who reads on a 3rd grade level, but then I have a student who reads on a kindergarten level, and I have to find a way to bridge the gap. We've been using OneNote since the beginning of this school year. Even in this short amount of time that we've had it, it's been completely transformational. When we first started using OneNote, I thought, okay, this is going to take us a while to get going, and we're going to have to learn how to use it. 3 days. It took them 3 days to master OneNote. I have a dyslexic student who's also dysgraphic. He still reads on a kindergarten level. He's 10 years old. He's still learning sight words, and he would tell me all the time that he was stupid. When we started this school year, he read 4 words per minute. For the longest time, I struggled with how to help him. And when we got the learning tools with the Immersive Reader, he went to 22 words per minute. I never thought in one calendar school year that we would even get into double digits. And he's at 22 words per minute, and he stayed there. For my students especially, it's really transformed their educational experience. I don't know what next year will look like. I don't know what our possibilities are, because in my wildest dreams, I never thought this would be what it is. Sky's the limit.
Okay, so I'm going to show it to you in Word, but I'm going to show it to you in Word Online. Now, I just need to make sure that everybody understands the difference between the fully installed version of Word and Word Online. So when you are looking at your machine, right, and you use Word that you know and love, you'd probably just click on a little icon somewhere, or in the Start menu, you'd open up Word. However, we have a version of Word called Word Online, or Word in the browser, and we find that by going to www.office.com. Okay, and when we get to www.office.com, we sign in using our school email address and password, and that's going to bring you into your Office 365 start page. And you may have another way of finding this, so if you know how to find this, that's fine. I'm just sharing this for people that don't know. And so when we come into office.com, you can see here I've got, it's telling me good afternoon, and there's some documents and bits and pieces, but down the side here, I've got my different apps, and Word usually sits at the top. Okay, so this is Word Online. So at the end of today, if you open up the normal version of Word and say, oh, this doesn't work for me, where is it? Please remember this moment where I said to you, folks, you need to be using Word Online. So I'm just in my browser, I go to office.com and click on Word Online. All right. Now what happens is I've got a document here that I'm going to share with you, and I'm going to show you there because I've already opened it. And what's happening here is the teacher has got a text that she wants her grade 3 students to read. Now, please, secondary teachers, 100%, this is totally transferable into your context as well, but we're just going to look at it through a primary lens today. And so what's happening is in the class, in the past, she would hand out the pieces of paper or the books or whatever it is, and maybe they're doing some sort of choral reading, or she's just asking them to do some reading and they're going to answer questions. But the little girl that we're talking about today, she's dyslexic and she is unable to decode at a fast enough rate. All right. So in the past, an aide would come and sit with her and would start to help her through a series of strategies to support her. Now, our little girl hates these moments because everybody in the school knows that she's dumb and that she can't read and all the things that she thinks about herself and in terms of her own self-esteem. That's not for a moment to disparage the work that the aide is doing, because obviously it's crucial. Nevertheless, this is how she feels. Now, what happens is by putting this into Microsoft 365 somewhere, so whether that's in Teams or OneNote or PowerPoint or Word or whatever, but in this case, it's in Word, our little girl is able to get a lot of the support that the aide would give her, but directly from the device. So it's going to reduce the stigma for her because she's on the same device as everybody else in the room and the same software as everybody else in the room. And nobody knows that she's getting the support that she's about to get. So what she can do is she can click on the View tab here, and then she can find the Immersive Reader button, right? And this is something that you maybe didn't know, in the search bar up here, sometimes called Tell Me, depending on which version that you've got in your online version, when we start to look for things, if I start to type Immersive Reader, what it does is it actually brings the buttons to me. All right. So if I was looking to make something bold, for example, you can see it brings the button to me. It's not just a help file. And so that's really good. Kids don't need to know where everything is. You and I don't need to know where everything is anymore. We can just look for it like that. But in this case, we're looking for Immersive Reader. So we're going to click on the Immersive Reader button, or we could have clicked it over here. But let's click on that. The first thing that we notice is Word is gone. So now we just have the document inside the browser. Now, this browser information up here might be a further distraction for the student. So we can just come over here to the Enter Full Screen Mode button, click on that, and now all the bells and whistles of the apps are gone. Okay, so no more blue buttons, Word, browser, etc., all gone. And we've just got the document, and you can see here that the document is just black text on a white background, and we've got some icons around here. Now, what I've done is I've actually dialed this document right back and the features in Immersive Reader. But once we set this, if we come back to the same device, it will remember our settings, which is really important. We don't have to do this every time, but I like to do a bit of a Microsoft reveal and show you how we can sort of build this out. All right, so we can see here the text is still quite small, but it's black text on a white background. So we're going to come up here to our text preferences button. All right, so the student's going to see that it's got 2 A's. She's going to click on that. And the first thing that she can do is she can use this slider to increase her text size. All right, so she can increase and decrease her text size according to what she needs. Now, in this case, remember, she's dyslexic, so she's going to want to also increase her spacing because of something called visual crowding, where the words, lines, and letters can look like they're actually running into each other. And dyslexic students often have times differentiating the beginning and endings of words. So being able to do that, increase the spacing. I think my kids are now coming in, which is cool. We can accentuate that spacing even further by increasing the text size as well. All right, we can change our fonts. So we've got Calibri, Sitka, and every primary teacher's favorite, Comic Sans. Secondary teachers don't get how important that font is, but I'm going to take it back to Calibri. And then we've also got the ability to change the theme. All right, so we can put it into dark mode, we can change the colors, etc. Now you can see down here we've also got show source formatting, so bold, italic, underline. For some students, it may be important that we leave that there. For others, it's a distraction, so we just want to be able to turn that off. So you can see we can turn the source formatting on and off in there as well. Now, the other thing that we can do is we can click on a word that we're struggling with. Now, you think about what the aide would have done once upon a time. The aide would have actually said to the, maybe read along with the student or just let the student read. And when they get to a word that they struggle with, the aide might have actually read that word to them. So I'm just getting a bit distracted as my kids are walking in. But what happens now is we imitate that. So when we click on the word holidays, you can see it drops down with a little auditory button there.
Holidays.
All right. And so we can hear that word. And I'm just going to ask my son to go upstairs and not distract me. All right. So you can see that when we get to words that we struggle with,
Soccer.
we can have those read. All right. So we're scaffolding there. But maybe the student needs the entire document read to them. Maybe her dyslexia is really quite profound. So in that case, what she can do is just click the little play button down the bottom here.
Last Christmas holidays I played with my puppy Brandy. I sprayed water at her. I wrestled her and I played soccer with her. We sat down together, we said jokes to each other, we played and played until I had to go into the house and eat lunch.
So you notice there that it's reading with a nice Aussie sounding accent, except when she gets to the word her, she sounds like she's from Johannesburg. But besides that, it's a very nice, natural sounding Aussie accent. We can also speed that up. All right. So it'll sound something like this.
Lunch. When I was done eating, I went back outside and I read her book called Flubber. I played tag with her and I tagged her 10 times.
Now, before you think, well, that's useless, students that are actually suffering dyslexia and not any sort of cognitive impairment, they actually tune into this and they want it that fast. But we can also slow it down for students that may be suffering from some sort of cognitive impairment or some other sort of challenge. At the moment, Australia only has a female voice, but some of the other accents and languages have male and female. Now, the other thing that we can do is that we can syllabify, right? So this is something else that the aid might have done, might have helped her chunk those words. So when we syllabify, the artificial intelligence that we're logged into here, not a lot of multisyllabic words in this one, but you can see there it is. It will actually break that down into syllables for us so the student can read along and break that down. Now, when it reads out loud, it's not going to syllabify, but the student can see that visually. The other thing that we've got is the ability to show parts of speech, all right? So we can show our nouns, right? So all our nouns are there. We can show all our verbs, our adjectives, and our adverbs. And we have the ability to change those colors. So there's more of this personalization, right? So I may have color differentiation issues. So I want to be able to change those colors, and we can do that. But if you are really locked out of colors, then you can show the labels. All right, like that. So you can see it tells which is a noun, which is a verb, etc. Now, the thing that I want to point out to you, which is really, really cool, is the artificial intelligence here. And this is where we're just moving into like Star Trek, right? Is the artificial intelligence. Look here, it showed tag here as a noun and tag here as a verb. And that's not because it's making mistakes, but because it's awesome. So when I played tag with her, tag is the name of the game and it's a noun. But when she got to tag me, tag is a verb. So the artificial intelligence is contextualizing those parts of speech, which I just think is absolutely brilliant. And I still get impressed by that even after all these years demoing this. Now, I'm just going to turn off the labels because that can be a little bit of a distraction when we're showing this. But the next thing that we've got is the reading preferences. All right, so we've got the ability, actually, I might just make this a little bit smaller so we can come back in here. Oh, no, just a little bit smaller still. And now when you come in, you see I've got the ability to reduce my distractions even further by having a 5-line reading line focus, a 3-line focus, or a 1-line focus. And so now when I play, it's imitating the covering of the text, which is exactly what a lot of you would do, but also the following along of the finger, highlighting each text as we go along, or each word as we go along.
She got to tag me with her tail 11 times, so she beat me. Then me and her said all of the 12 months 5 times. Then we sang a song.
All right, which is pretty cool. So again, what we're doing is we're trying to imitate what teachers naturally do and aides naturally do with the students. So we're just imitating those really good practices. Now, the other thing that we've got over here is picture dictionary. So we click on the picture dictionary button, and now what happens is when I get to a word that I don't know or that I'm struggling with, I'm going to have the option to see it and hear it.
Puppy.
But I've also got a picture dictionary, which is going to be giving me picture prompts. Now, not every word has got a prompt, all right? But a lot of them do. And this is not contextualized, so it's going to give you multiple answers. So look at something like played, right? We can see that there's all these different possible meanings for played, right? But not every word, got to try and find one. Isn't that funny? Not every word, there we go, I found one. Not every word's got one. Now that's powered by BoardMaker, and so that's added to all the time by us, but you cannot add your own, okay? All right, so talk about personalization, right? So a moment ago, what we had was we had this, and the student was locked out. But by clicking on the Immersive Reader button, remember, it set it exactly the way that I left it. So that means that regardless of the app, regardless of what the original document looks like, this little girl is going to see it exactly how she wants to see it every time she goes into a document and turns on Immersive Reader. So not every student is going to turn on every one of these features. Of course not. It's about scaffolding, right? Too much support and the student won't progress, but not enough support and the student won't progress either, right? So it's that scaffolding and making sure that we have that all sort of built in there. Now, another scenario is EAL. All right. So we may have a student, for example, who has come from born in Australia, but comes from a language background other than English, or maybe they've recently arrived in the country pre-COVID. Let's pretend that that's a thing. So I'm going to take you in and show you Korean, for example. All right. So what happens is in this scenario, I've got a little boy in my class who's Korean. His English is actually quite good, but occasionally he gets stuck on some words. And his dominant language is Korean. And of course, we know, those of you that are in EAL, we know that drawing on the mother tongue or drawing on the dominant language is very much an important part of teaching English as an additional language. So it's not cheating, it's not putting them behind the 8 ball. So what happens is when he gets to a word that he doesn't know, he clicks on his word and he still gets to see it and hear it in English.
Holidays.
He still gets the picture dictionary, but he also gets to see and hear it in Korean.
휴가.
All right. Now, what can happen for him is he may want the entire document translated. Okay. And so in doing so, he can now see it and hear it in Korean.
지난 크리스마스 휴가 나는 내 강아지 브랜디와 함께 연주. 나는 그녀에게 물을 뿌려 했다.
Now, Korean's a good language. I like to show that one because Korean is one of the more advanced languages in the program, and we have the picture dictionary. Okay, we have the parts of speech. You can still see it's got the parts of speech colored there as well. Not every language is going to have the parts of speech. Not every language is going to have the picture dictionary. In fact, not every language has spoken either. But a lot of them do, and they're constantly being updated all the time. So you'll find that most of the languages that you want to use with students that you're working with will be in there. So for example, if we go into Saudi Arabic, for example, and depending on where I go, sometimes that's exactly what people want. And you can see Arabic has the parts of speech, it has the picture dictionary, and it has the spoken voice. Have a listen to this.
عطلة عيد الميلاد الماضي لعبت مع بلدي جارو براندي. لقد رشت الماء عليها لقد صارعتها ولعبت كرة القدم معها جلسنا.
So, and we can go backwards and forwards between the original and the translated language. Now, what's important to note is, so I'm 50, so I think I just forgot what I was going to tell you is important to note. But the languages are all varied in their abilities, etc. All right. So that's what Immersive Reader looks like. And I'm going to, in a moment, just going to show you another video, and then I'm going to take you through and I'm going to talk to you about where you can find it and where it exists. So I'm just going to skip over to our next video. I'll just let that load.
The true purpose of education is to create possibility.
It was a little hard for me. People laugh whenever I read sometimes. Well, they knew how to read, and I didn't.
I will never be good at reading. I will probably be held back again.
It highlights the words to know where I am. When it's reading, I see spaces between the words, and it's easy to focus on. The first time I actually could read that book, I was proud of myself. I was very proud of myself. Good job, Joey.
When technology and education come together, possibility becomes reality.
I want to read every book in here.
Now, thinking about that personalization, right? Remembering that what we just saw there is the ability for the student to set it to be exactly as they want it. And that can look very different student to student, but all the teacher had to do was put the Word document into M365. All right, so let's talk about some of the things that we can do in this space. Because we want to look for mainstream applications, because the more mainstream applications that are there means that the kids that in inverted commas need it don't stand out, right? So it's all about this reduction of stigma, as well as the usefulness and purposefulness, of course. But you can see here things like sight words, right? So when I was an early years teacher, finding ways to present sight words to students, you know, without them getting bored too soon meant a constant rotation of different methods, right? So this is just another one to add to that. So the students can actually be using Immersive Reader on their sight words. They get the, you know, the picture dictionaries, they get the speech, you know, the colors and those kinds of things as well. So that's a really good application that we've seen. And these kids are not diagnosed with anything. These kids are just first grade emerging readers using the tools. Another thing is, and if you're old enough to remember listening posts, where we used to have cassettes and then we moved on to CDs, where the students would actually have the text read to them. And of course, later we moved to more computerized, but we were locked into whatever was published. Whereas now we can actually create our own texts and then we can put those at independent reading stations. So that's another mainstream application. The other thing, and we've got some studies, and when you download my slides, if you can remember to do so, I've actually put some research in there as well. One of the studies that was carried out showed that, so anecdotally, the teacher said that it reduced stigma, right? And it increased their independence. So they weren't depending on the teacher and they weren't depending on peers. Another study showed that it targets high interest, low ability. So what happened here was we weren't focusing on students that were diagnosed with anything. We were just actually seeing how they responded to text which was above their level. So it meant that they had a higher level of comprehension, etc. The other thing that a study that was carried out was by the British Dyslexia Association and Knoll Hill, which is a school in the UK that focuses on dyslexia. They saw that 16 out of 18 children showed improved behaviour, which meant that kids were actually able to access the texts for the first time, or at least, you know, in it easier than they could before. And then 11 out of 16 kids saw their reading comprehension scores get better. Both of these are statistically significant. Another research that was carried out was by an organisation called RTI, which showed that 4th to 12th grade students saw their reading comprehension scores improve, their writing improved, etc. And that link is there, but also the report is there for you to download when you visit that link. Now, these were not necessarily students with challenges. This was just true right across the board. So again, looking for that mainstream application. So where do we find Immersive Reader? We find it in Office 365, which you have all got. Okay, so it's 100% there, but it is there free for everybody as well at Office Online. So if you don't have Office 365 and you go to office.com, you can create a free account and you can access it in there as well. And of course, it's there in Teams. Now, I'm very much aware of the fact that we're coming to the end of our time, so I'm going to fly through this. It is available in OneNote. It is available in OneNote for Windows 10. It is available for OneNote Online. But look how well we play with the other kids. It is also available in OneNote for the iPad app and OneNote for the Mac app as well. Please note it is not available in Word for the Mac or Word for the iPad, but you can still use it in the browser and be accessing it through office.com as well if you're wanting to use it in Word. We signed the Made by Dyslexia pledge with the UK organisation Made by Dyslexia, which means that we are committed to this. This is not going to be a fly-by-night tool. This is going to be remaining in our tools. And we also partner with Code Red Dyslexia Network, who are very active in South Australia. In fact, their sitting president is in South Australia. And so we work very closely with them here in Australia. Now, I would take you through and talk to you about Office Lens, but I'm going to let you access that when you access the slides. Instead, I'm going to tell you that there is a version of Immersive Reader in the Edge browser, the Microsoft Edge browser. So make sure that you download the latest version of Edge and it lives inside there. Also, we've got it in Forms. If you don't know, Forms is an absolutely brilliant tool for assessment. It collects the data, does auto marking, etc. Having Immersive Reader in there means that students that can't access the assessment because of the text, because they're challenged by print, it will deliver it to them directly through Forms. It's also available in Outlook Online and will soon be available in Outlook for Windows 10 as well. So students can use Immersive Reader to have their emails accessed. The other thing that we've done is we built it into Minecraft Education Edition. So this is not the full version of Minecraft. Oh, sorry, they're both the full version. This is not the vanilla Xbox, PlayStation version of Minecraft. This is the Education Edition, which you all have access to. But you can see here that the Immersive Reader button is living down here. So what was once upon a time just text the student had to read is now able to be opened and have the full Immersive Reader experience, including translation, etc. And the other thing that we've done is we've built some of those Minecraft picture dictionary stuff into the picture dictionary tool, so they can actually look at what are we talking about here. There's a creeper, there's a mushroom, there's the nether, etc. It has now just been released into PowerPoint Online. It's not necessarily going to be in the full version of PowerPoint, but it's definitely in PowerPoint Online. But it will eventually, parity will come and it will be in there as well. So if you're looking for it in PowerPoint, make sure that you go online through the browser. It is in Teams. It is right across Teams in the assignment features, in the chat, in lots of different areas. You can actually be turning on Immersive Reader. Just for the sake of time, I'm not going to demo those, but I will remind you as well that because things like Word and Forms and OneNote and these other things live inside Teams, it is inside those tools inside Teams as well. So we talk about that personalization as opposed to differentiation. If I'm pushing out my learning engagements and assessments, etc., through Teams, I know that my students can personalize those and I don't have to worry about setting that up for them. Yes, I have to teach them. Yes, I have to facilitate that personalization and make sure they understand it's there, but I don't have to be setting that up for them. Instead, it's already there by default. Now, you want to know all about Immersive Reader? Troy's spoken at 1,000,000 miles an hour. It's been very, very quick. That's okay. I've got a link for you here down the bottom when you get these slides, and you can go back and there is a web page here all about Immersive Reader, including videos and PDFs to share with friends and family and that kind of thing. All right, and your students and their parents. Another thing that I've got is my video series on YouTube, aka.ms/TroyYT, aka.ms/TroyYT. As a matter of fact, this video will go on there, but we'll share the link with you directly to that video. But I've got a lot of videos in that space about Immersive Reader and other things as well. And we have a whole heap of courses on the Microsoft Educator Center around this space. So that's education.microsoft.com. I'm watching time, so I'm going to fly. See how this says special education and accessibility resources for remote learning? Just cross off remote learning because the rest of the world is still in lockdown. We're not. This page is still relevant to you. Everything that we have in this space starts on this web page, right? This launching page, and it's aka.ms/mech accessibility, aka.ms/mech accessibility. But remember, you can get these videos. I just found this today. You're the first to see this in one of my workshops. There's a Sway, which is like a web page that's been built by an educator, a Microsoft Innovative Educator expert. Doesn't work for Microsoft. They're really out there teaching. And they have built an accessibility guide around Immersive Reader and other tools as well. So the link is there for you when you download those slides. And then Mike Tholfsen has a YouTube series. His are more snackable, short little ones, whereas mine are the sort of 45-minute videos. So that link will work. You can jump in and have a look at what he's got in there as well. All right, now the last thing, well, not the last thing, the second last thing I want to talk to you about is we have built a parent kit. So what this is, and I just realized that guy is wearing the jumper that I just bought recently from Uniqlo, and I wonder if I did that subconsciously. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So this inclusive classroom parent kit, aka.ms/ICPK, is not to be given to the parents. It is for you to run either face-to-face or virtually. And what we've done is we have built for you a PowerPoint deck with detailed instructions, scripts, and you can run a workshop, a parent night, right? Either a 2-hour workshop or 2 1-hour workshops for the parents, explaining to them all about Immersive Reader and other tools so that they can use this at home with their students, right? So there's with their kids. So there's handouts, there's this PowerPoint deck, etc. aka.ms/ICPK. I really suggest that you jump in there and have a look at that. Now, another thing I want to just throw in, just a bit of a shameless plug, is if your school is interested in teams and setting up teams, please reach out to me. I'm doing a trip to Adelaide in June, which is already sold out. I haven't got any more spots, but if we can get some more schools that are interested in having some sessions, I'm happy to come back. All right. So what I'm talking here is setting up your school-wide team strategy. So it's a workshop that I would have with your leadership and your teaching and learning people and your IT. We get them all together and we talk about teams. Okay. Lastly, find me on social media. Okay. I am on Twitter, I am on LinkedIn, and I'm on Facebook. This is a professional account. It's all about education and education accessibility. So please look me up, add me, and then I'll start to turn up in your feed with the latest, greatest stuff in the space. And you'll know it's me if you do a search. Just search for Troy Waller. You know it's me because I've got this little icon here. And lastly, don't forget aka.ms/today's stuff, 2 S's. That's where you go to grab these slides. All right, now